Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply. This video is to bring you a closer look at the Stanley. This is their part number F179 4x4 US3 is what it is. This is a pretty common hinge in the world of hinges, especially when it comes to residential doors that are exterior, meaning generally on an exterior residential door, they're going to be 1 3/4 thick. And 4x4 would be a common size for that application, whereas if it was a commercial door that was 1 3/4 thick, that'd be 4.5 by 4.5. So a 4x4 is pretty common in the world of residential applications. This is a very nice, high-quality hinge. I'm a fan of Stanley hinges unapologetically. I really like the action. Even this plain bearing hinge swings and smooths, swings so very smoothly. Okay, most hinges when you get them just don't operate so freely, and it's a remarkable component of Stanley hinges. And that's what the US3 looks like. Let's dissect the part number. First of all, F179 in no particular order. That's going to mean that this is a steel-based hinge. That is a full mortise hinge. You can see from the swag on the hinge leaf here and here that when the leaves are brought parallel, they're meant to be mortised flush to the edge of the door and frame, permitting that small gap between the door and frame. It also means it's a 5-knuckle hinge. You can see why that is the case. Also mean it is a plain bearing hinge, meaning there are no bearing packets or means between the knuckle areas of contact to reduce friction. It's just a standard common hinge in that regard. If you are talking about using this hinge on any door that has some certain frequency of use or more than just very, very occasional usage on it, I would absolutely go to a ball bearing hinge. I would even consider a plain bearing hinge. And while it may not be discernible early on in the installation between a plain bearing and a ball bearing, you look at that same hinge 1, 2, 3, 20 years down the road, even a low volume hinge will have noticeable wear compared to a ball bearing hinge. So if you wanted a ball bearing version of this, it would be the FBB179. Also means it is a standard weight hinge. It means this leaf thickness should be 130 thousandths when measured. With the caliper, it's actually 0.126. So a little shy on that, but nonetheless, certainly within reason or tolerance. Okay, so 126 thousandths is what we just measured. The location of the holes are what we would call a template pattern, and that would also be inferred in the part number as well. The template pattern we will review when we hop over to the screen view and take a closer look at the supporting documentation. This is going to include a package of screws. Screws for this hinge are automatically included, I should say are included with this order for an all wood or all machine sort of accommodation. Don't assume that Stanley will understand what screws that you want. Feel free to indicate at the time of order in the comment field what screws that you would like for us to supply with the hinge. All metal screws, all wood screws, half metal screws, half wood screws. It's going to be awfully difficult to get your hands on a brass plated screw in a very, very short lead time if you don't have the proper makeup of screws when the hinges arrive to you. Could this be a metal door in a metal frame? Yeah, it could be. Could it be a wood door in a metal frame? It could. Well, is it most likely a wood door in a wood frame? It is, but again, it can be, it could be anything. So be sure to eliminate the possibility of getting them incorrectly. This is going to be available in every finish that Stanley can do on steel. Your brasses, your bronze, your chromes, your nickels, satin, polished. They can do black. They can do a US1D, which is a dull or a flat, or even what has been called a dead black japanned, a very flat, non-reflective surface. They can do that. Oil rub bronze they can do. Because they're Stanley, they probably have capabilities of lots of finishes that aren't listed in their catalog. I also like their logo that you see here. It's petite. I've seen other logos that are just, huge. I don't like unnecessary corporate advertising on my builder's hardware. Let's switch to the screen view and take a closer look at the supporting documentation. Okay, so here is the item that we are indeed looking at. For internal or external doors without door closers in hospitals, churches, schools, airports, etc. The reference to without door closer means if you have a door closer, you are obligated, or at least you're instructed to use ball bearing hinges with a door closer. This would be not the right item for a door closer. All hinges have template screw hole location for use on either wood or metal doors. It's a 4x4 hinge that's plain bearing with a removable pin. They say the gauge is .123. I would have thought this is supposed to be a .130 hinge in a 4x4. So let's just assume that .123 is accurate. If it's not, we will correct that. Standard weight, steel base, 5 knuckle. Tech drawing, link over here. That's a template. That's going to really just show you the location of the screw holes here, as well as the swag line, the F dimension, which is the dimension from the edge of the leaf to the beginning of the bend. You'll notice that these columns refer to different widths of hinges from Stanley. They're all 4 inch tall, but they can do a 3.5, 4, 5, 6, and 7 inch. And the only thing that changes is that F dimension. What doesn't change on all of these is the location of these screw holes. So if you're not sure if these are the locations of the holes in your hinge, and not all 4 inch hinges are the same. In fact, there are several and many different patterns of hole locations. Be sure to double check. While it wouldn't really be a deal breaker that your holes were in a different location, likely at a minimum you'll be drilling new holes, and you'll likely be drilling and then doweling and then re-drilling holes to move those screw hole locations around a little bit. So that template's provided there for you. So this document is called a template. It's a technical drawing. This pattern happens to be called the template pattern. You can have different patterns on different templates, but those other patterns on templates are not referred to the template pattern. So any manufacturer who does 4 inch tall, anything related to this hinge, frames, doors, if they put their locations for screws at the template pattern, you know that it will match. 2 different columns for different part numbers. This is the same document for all. If you wanted this same hinge in a non-ferrous, like a brass or a bronze or a stainless steel, it would become F191. A really great option for ball bearings would be the FBB, or even better, the CB, a concealed bearing, and I believe that's going to be a 3-knuckle hinge at that point. Okay. Well, actually, it may not be. The CB1900 might be the 3-knuckle version. We'll look at the catalog to that as well. Now, what else is linked to down below here? Installation template. Yeah, not too much to see there at all. And then the hinge size, that's just another document that is not very germane. So let's copy our F179 part number. Let's open up the link to the manufacturer's page here. And what I like about this document, or pardon me, this page, is the link to this older document, this 2010 Architectural Hardware Catalog. This catalog is very helpful because it is well, I'm sure their current catalog is helpful as well. I happen to like this older version because this format of this catalog I've been using for decades, and I know where everything is, and I like this format of this catalog because it's pretty comprehensive. So let's first take that F179 and do a search on our keyboard for F179. Then we'll get to ultimately to the cut sheet of where it can be found, and there it is. Now, what we were going to check was the leaf thickness of the 4x4, and indeed, the catalog calls it 130 thousandths, so we're going to get that corrected. We're, of course, going to get that corrected by the time you're seeing this video, most likely. So it's 130 thousandths thick. And what's nice about this page is it will tell you on the F179 all of the sizes that can be done, okay, in this column. Everything from 3x3 all the way to 5x5. If you need a hinge that's larger than that, you'll have to go to a thicker hinge, which is the F168. The non-ferrous base materials can be done in brass or bronze or stainless, as listed. Very handy. Now, I had also questioned whether or not our CB179 was 3 or 5. Okay, it's a 5 knuckle. I can see in the catalog here. A CB179 is a 5 knuckle hinge. Now, because we're talking about it, I want to scroll down to where that hinge is seen in terms of its cut sheet. And I'm just doing a find function. What's nice about this hinge is that it is a concealed bearing. So you won't have any of the unsightly bearing packets here and here. The internal construction of this hinge, what they refer to as lifespan, is substantially more robust compared to plain bearing. And I would guesstimate, based on what I've heard or been told in the past, it's probably 20 or 25% more capable than a ball bearing hinge. The other hinge I had mentioned was the CB1900, and that is indeed the 3-knuckle version of these hinges. Now, why would you want a 3-knuckle hinge version versus a 5-inch knuckle? Well, if you're going to order a concealed bearing hinge, generally what happens is people are going for a look, a cleaner look, versus the bearing packet on an FBB 179. So, if you consider the aesthetics at least as important, if not more so, definitely consider a 3-knuckle hinge when you're doing your CB version. So go to a CB 1900, and that'll give you a 3-knuckle, very clean look. Okay. Now, this catalog is helpful for reasons beyond just showing you what hardware is involved. Back to the beginning of the catalog, all this general hinge information is here, and it's an overview of the different types of hinges: full mortise, full surface, half mortise, swing clear, wide throw, raised barrel, anchor hinges, combinations of all of the above. Gives you guidelines in terms of how to determine the width of the hinge, how many hinges to use, what you might want to consider when it comes to how many hinges based on a door weight, which is this chart here. So if you are even occasionally involved in hinges, you may want to review this. And if you are in the door hardware industry, you'll want to consider this required reading. This is called an olive knuckle hinge, or a palmel hinge, sometimes it's referred to. It's obviously a 2-knuckle hinge, but it's not really known as a 2-knuckle hinge. A 2-knuckle hinge would look like our typical full mortise, FBB 168, except that it's a 2-knuckle version. Different hinge types, really fascinating material that's here. Talk about their different options in terms of a non-removable pin or other security features are here. That's a raised barrel hinge. You'll see that when you have a deeper rabbet, or a very great inset, I should say, or some sort of condition that is running conflict with the location of the barrel of the hinge. The definition on how hinge leaves are swagged. Okay. A full mortise hinge has both leaves swagged. Electrification options in terms of transferring power, etc. Let's wrap up this video on camera. Now, in conclusion, I am a big fan of the fit and finish of the Stanley hinge. Every time I get them, they're clean. They're very free swinging and free. They're free swinging is what I'm driving at. It tells me that Stanley has a very firm grasp over the manufacturing process, because they routinely, regularly put material out that is just such good looking hardware. And while it's, it might be just a hinge to most people, and it will be just a hinge to most people, it tells me that on how nice this looks, it's not just a hinge to the Stanley Company, a name that's been synonymous with hardware like this for since the mid-19th century. One other thing that I like about Stanley hinges, and they're not the only people that do it, but not everyone does. They include shims. This is perforated cardboard that you can use to help tip the door, cant the door around, move it to accommodate your unusual frame condition. Perhaps you might have a frame that's not true plumb level and square. The jambs might be towed or kicked out, whatever it might be. They also use them to separate the hinge leaves, so that's handy. But they're also shims. Screws, like we spoke about that, they're sold and priced per hinge. If you need 3 hinges, order 3, just because they can fit 3 in a box, and they do on this hinge. That's not how they're priced. The reason we don't price them per box is, what if you have a Dutch door and you need 4 hinges? So we don't make you buy 6. What if you need just 2? We don't make you buy 3, that kind of thing. Any questions on the Stanley F179 4x4 in a US3 finish, or any other Stanley product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you. If you've enjoyed this video, please click thumbs up. Please click subscribe as well, and even share the video with someone that you know. And if you have any questions for a future video, please send them our way, and we will make every attempt to oblige. And thank you very much.